This session is really around rising stars, male rising stars. We're here to talk about their careers, what challenges they face within their careers, but also to talk about some of their successes. Most importantly, how they got to where they are. This is very important from the perspective of encouraging and stimulating young scientists around the world, particularly in Africa, to follow certain careers or not. Some of you might be here saying, I am in science, I'm doing my master's, PhD, whatever it is. However, this is not for me. I have chosen the science field because I did well in biology at school. However, now tasting real microbiology, real biochemistry, and so forth, perhaps it's time for a career change. All of these things, of course, affect, the number of scientists, good scientists we have on the continent, and ultimately what we want to achieve from this session is to give some encouragement and for you to go away and understand that you are in the right place at the right time as far as your careers are concerned. I will then start with very quick introductions, the purpose really for the panelists, the esteemed panelists, to very quickly tell us about themselves, just so that you can have a taste of where they've been, what they have done, and what they want to do. So perhaps let me start with you, Dr. Basing. Tell us about your career pathway very, very quickly. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation, and I'm sorry I won't be physically present. So, as an introduction, I work at an podcast. I'm a lecturer at the Department of Medical Health and Diagnostics at National University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, Ghana. I also run and run a company called Impact Diagnostics. Impact Diagnostics, we develop and manufacture point-of-care tests. So we have numerous tests, pregnancy, HIV, malaria, and all of that. We also use molecular point-of-care tests. An example of that is so we can research on disease results, all of these we develop and manufacture right here in Ghana. I have a background in both microbiology and biomedical engineering, and these are parts that at the beginning I never intended to say anyway. I was more interested in clinical assessment, but different circumstances like brought all of this together, and I put both the biomedical engineering and microbiology together into social diagnostic, and I couldn't really keep that well. And I always share my knowledge with students, and thus I teach in the university. So I think the program was you tell each of the families that are participating, but basically this is about what I do right now.
Thank you. Dr. Kibera, perhaps you can tell us about your career pathway and what you do now, which is quite similar to what we've just heard.
Yes, my name is Joshua. I am a pathologist. I started off as a medical doctor, graduated, and everybody told me not to get into pathology, but I loved looking down microscopes, and eventually just decided I'm going to follow my heart and do pathology. So I did pathology, and after that went into teaching. I taught at a university. I was head of a pathology department for some time, and while I was there, ended up starting to do software in pathology. I started my own lab, and sometimes I think that it's kind of like a hobby gone out of control that ended up becoming a company. That's where I find myself today as a person who runs the pathology network in Kenya, and I'm also chair of the board of another company that I founded, which is a cancer center. Yeah, that's what I do.
Well, thank you very much. Prof. Kati, as an academic, tell us a bit about your career and your pathway. In essence, having become an associate professor 8 years after your graduation, This is something we'd like to hear about. We know of people who take years and only become professors when they're gray, having lost all their hair, some of their teeth have fallen out, etc., etc. Please tell us about this.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to everyone. Yes, so my name is Andile Kati. I'm an associate professor at UKZN, a physiologist by training. So I've had to do a lot of things, but I think the short version of it is that I graduated 2015, and then I just started working. I think I had a lot of ideas that I wanted to try out. So I've supervised masters and PhD students. What I also did around 2020, you know, when there's chaos, there's opportunity. So we published a number of COVID-19 papers, but we also, in the process, we invented a point-of-care device for diagnosis because I'm in non-communicable diseases, so we invented that. And then we also, so I also lead quite a vibrant young research team. So from that, we also then started up the Diabetes Association, Diabetes and Endocrine Research Society of Southern Africa. So we're very academic, but we've also got our hands in biotechnology, and we've got our hands also in raising awareness in the social space. So we do a lot of scientific work, but we're also very community-based. So I think I'll just stop there for now. Thanks.
Okay, super. Dr. Cele, perhaps tell us about your career development, what you've brought in terms of knowledge into the world, because I have a few questions.
Thank you so much, Chair, and afternoon to everyone. I'm Sandy Dekwele from the Oram Institute. I work there as a scientist. I joined them early this year, I think the 1st of March. So I've spent most of my research career at the Africa Health Research Institute under the supervision of Prof. Alex Sigal, who heads a lab that study emerging infections. So during COVID-19, we did a lot of work there where we were studying the virus. So the approach we used there was to establish a cohort by enrolling patients that were SARS-CoV-2 positive in 3 different hospitals around Devon. So we developed ways to isolate the variants, and we also developed assays to characterize the immune system. And we're working in collaboration with CRISP and the NICD. And through that collaborations, we were the first group to isolate the beta variant and also to report that Omicron escapes neutralization by Pfizer. So that's some of the work that we did with Alex.
Super. So then, having understood, a bit about all of your careers, let's perhaps get into some of the, I suppose, issues that in essence are very close to people's hearts. So yourself, Sandile, having isolated, the Omicron, why then are you not a what do they call it? A Nobel Peace Prize winner?
Yeah, I will admit we did very well during SARS-CoV-2.
Yes.
Like we're the first, as I've said, we're the first one to isolate the beta variant, and that led to so many research institutions requesting that we ship the variant to them so that they could study it further. And the Omicron work, I think we did that work in less than a month. So we received a swab sample in November, and by December we had already written to Nature, and Nature had accepted our paper. And only after the publication, Pfizer also came out to report the same thing that we had done. But we're not the only research group who was working as fast as we were, so there were competition. So I know we've done well, but yeah, we do have some recognition, though, even though it's not a Nobel Prize. So we've managed to establish collaborations worldwide. So I think that's quite an achievement.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Gibera, having achieved certain successes in your career, I see now that you're in essence an entrepreneur. You're gone off on your own. Can you tell us, from your experience, what is it about Kenya? What is it about East Africa that makes it easy or difficult, if you may, to become an entrepreneur?
I don't think East Africa or maybe, well, I think, let me say this. Entrepreneurship is difficult anywhere, I think, in the world. I think Kenya has some advantages in that it is, quote unquote, kind of like the light shines on us, just like it does on South Africa, Nigeria, and Ghana, where the economics of the country mean that there's more capital available. And so that has helped. Also, the relative stability of our country for some time in comparison to some of what's been going around with our neighbors means that there's just a lot of inflow of capital and we've been able to grow our healthcare system. So it's been a great opportunity for budding entrepreneurs. I think me personally, I got into entrepreneurship by chance. It's not like I left school as a pathologist saying, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. No, I wanted to just practice my pathology quietly and teach. But then the problems that were in the market demanded a solution. I felt I had a solution that I could give.
So here you're saying that follow your passion and do what you think will be socially acceptable and beneficial to society. Having said that, Prof, if I may ask you, as a young professor, surely you're at an institution, and correct me if I'm wrong, where there are much older and more seasoned professors such as yourself. How do you feel in that particular space? Do you feel some sort of intimidation? Do you feel every day there's a need to prove yourself? Tell us a bit about the career progression as a professor. What challenges are you facing at the university? Maybe the university is one to be spoken about, to say, come to UKZN, it is easy to become a professor. Tell us about that.
It's hard to address this without ruffling a few feathers, but I suppose the journey itself, I think the number one thing is that you have to do the work. You have to do everything that's required. But as a young person, one of the things is that when you do work, it is a space for more seasoned people, more people of higher ages. So when you do walk into these spaces, there is that doubt. I don't know if it's self-inflicted, where you look at yourself. I think they call it imposter syndrome, where you start asking yourself, should I even be here? What am I doing here? Is my opinion going to matter to these people? So they might be thinking that, but I have no assurance of that. So I think most of it comes from within, where you start doubting your own abilities. But I think the most important thing is that once you start seeing results, and you start getting validation, and you get that through a variety of things. You get that through the publication of your papers. You get that through producing students and graduating students. Then you start seeing, okay, maybe people don't view me the way that I view myself. So, but it is a very challenging area to be in. The institution provides a lot of support for young academics, but I think because there's very few of us who are there at a young age, it can get a bit intimidating. So yeah, so it's just a matter of doing the work until you feel comfortable with your own achievements.
Does this have anything to do with our own upbringing as men or not? And perhaps let me ask you, Sandile, from your experience, is there anything that you can recall from your upbringing as a youngster that has either shaped your career or that has, in essence, introduced certain limitations in your own self, in other words, how you feel and how you think around your own career?
I grew up in a rural area. I only moved to Durban at the age of 15 to do, grade 9. And already growing up in a rural area, you don't really have role models and stuff. So I'm a scientist now. It's not something that I would say, if asked, that I grew up aspiring to be a scientist. I didn't even know the field exists. So, but I got to, I think I only knew about it in detail when I got to university. You'll be surprised if I was to tell you when I went to university, I wanted to register for this Bachelor of Accounting, because I also did accounting, but I wasn't really good at maths. So I couldn't get in there, and the only degree that was still open for application was biological sciences. I was like, I got 70 in bio, I might as well enroll for biology. So that's how I got into the field. That's why every chance I get, I try to go back to my area and then educate kids, especially grade 9s. Because in grade 10, that's where you choose what field you want to follow. So I try to make sure that other kids don't go through what I went through, just to advise them on what to do. Yeah.
Communications, do you have Dr. Basing connected or not? Have you lost him? Oh, okay, there you are.
Yes,
Okay, super. Thank you, Dr. Basing. So, as somebody who has gone through academics, as a scientist, engineer, innovator, entrepreneur, you're doing a lot of things. Is there something to be learned from that, just in terms of being focused? Some people have it. In other words, they can do many things. They can teach, they can sell. You've got about 21 or so products in the market and so forth. It means you're running your own businesses. People might be coming there trying to steal your IP, etc., etc. All of that is in essence very taxing and requires you to be on top of your game all the time. What is it, do you think? What is it, do you think, is special about yourself that you're able to, in essence, spread yourself thinly, as it were?
all right, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think that I have been very lucky in the extent that I have a very good opportunity. And I think that is one of the things that a lot of us as young people, we take for granted. Being able to build a team that can confidently assign duties. When I started, it was very difficult for me because I felt that I'm going to do every single thing. And so when people does something, I will go through and make sure that it's separate because I didn't want to have a situation where you send the document outside and somebody questions. And so I was very particular and wanted to do everything by myself. But over the years, I realized that the more I get on the opportunities and I work with them with people that I got now, there are a lot of documents, there are a lot of things that go out that I just want to sound really about. And so I think that has been something that really works for me. I don't know what to do that I have signed various opportunities and I don't have to go back and do all of them. I could travel for 6 months and I wouldn't worry about something in my company because I knew that there are people there that will make sure that things work the way they are supposed to. The second one is putting systems in place. I have spent years putting some systems so that even if you are in place as a team member, the system is there, and so it's very difficult for somebody to come and do something. And so building that system has taken a lot of money. I might be in a different country, for instance, and as I said, I might be in a different country, but I have real-time information about what is happening in the company, and that is because I have put in place. So having a very wonderful team, having a good system, and then thirdly, at least having adequate knowledge in all of these areas have also been very helpful. You're going to employ people who are very knowledgeable. And so when you are managing people who are very knowledgeable, you will need to be on top of the issue. Leading leaders is not easy, and leading people who are very, very talented is not easy. They will think that they are more knowledgeable than you, the business owner or the main entrepreneur, and so you need to have knowledge in at least in all of those areas. And so as an entrepreneur, you need to learn, constantly learn, add knowledge to yourself, and then you don't have to go.
Comments, perhaps we can switch off his camera just so we can get more bandwidth. Thank you. Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, yes. My final point was that you need to have knowledge of it. It's very easy for you to have control and be able to manage your business very well. Thank you.
Super, super. Thank you very much. Dr. Kibera, in your case, I mean, as you said, you followed your passion. How is it regarding your business? Do you feel that you're also torn between, your different career aspirations?
I know I'm living my dream. In stress sometimes, and sometimes wondering why I'm living my dream, because sometimes it's easier to not. But I don't feel like I can look back and say I don't have any regrets. What would have been a regret is if I knew I had a solution that I could have given to the world and I never pursued it. I think that would have been, it would gnaw at my heart every day. Like I feel that I would have felt that there's something in me that is not, hasn't been released. And so I understand if somebody, sometimes stays because of life circumstances, decides that they can't pursue that solution. But I feel privileged that I was able to do that. Yeah.
So, Prof, having come up with great inventions, as you've mentioned now, why have you not left the safety net of a salary, pension, all of that at university, and gone off and run your own business in what you have discovered?
It's certainly something that I've been thinking about in recent history. I think it also touches on what you spoke about. My first responsibility is to my family and to my daughter, and so that's primary goal number one. So if I do make the jump to entrepreneurship, or I venture out, it has to be something that I've already established while I'm in academia. I cannot leave the safety and security of a salary, as you said, because then that puts my family or my daughter's future in jeopardy. So as you said, there are certain responsibilities that do come with men that are hardly spoken about. So it's not that we also don't face sacrifices of some sort, because I could have also gone and ventured out, I could have spent some time abroad. But I think the most important thing for me at this particular point in time is just making sure that everyone in my circle or everyone in my family is taken care of.
Okay. So then let's talk about those things that are very personal to us as men. Having come this far in our careers, but also having to make very difficult decisions or not. So Sandy, let's perhaps start with you. On a very personal level, at a very personal level, and we did talk about this in preparation for this session. Have you had challenges, I suppose, to decide whether to start a family or not? Did you find that as a young man, you found yourself being a father? Do you find that you had a mother to take care of, siblings and so forth? Take us through that. Colleagues, all of you, please prepare in your minds a response to that question. So I think it's very important that we speak about these things as men, because even as our women watch us progress in our careers, there are certain things that we say to our wives, our girlfriends, etc., and some things we don't say to them for various reasons. Take me through that. Take us all through that, because I think men need to hear this, but also women need to hear this.
Yeah. I graduated last year, May. But already by then, I knew end of 2021 that my PhD I had submitted and I had passed, but graduation was on May. And I had opportunities with collaborators. They wanted me to go overseas and pursue my postdoctoral studies and stuff. So I was very tempted to go, but then I looked at my situation back home. I actually lost my mother in the year 2004. So I'm with my dad now, and my dad is around 70 now. And we have a family of like 10. He has like 9 kids, some which are still very young. So in a way, I feel like I have to be around and I have to take care of them. And also my brothers, from my family, I'm the only one who had an opportunity to go to a university to get a degree, let alone to go to honors, masters, and PhD and stuff. So really for me, it was really a difficult decision. I really wanted to go, but it's like, when I do go, then what of my family? So I had to make that decision to say, I'll stay and work hard as I have been, so that they were taken care of.
Let me ask you a very direct question. Are you bitter about this? In other words, if things were different, would you have moved overseas? Is this a lost opportunity? You will never see this? And how does it make you feel?
It wasn't going to be a permanent thing. Maybe I would go for postdoc, usually it's about 2 to 3 or 4 years. I was eventually going to come back. But where I'm at now, I changed from doing SARS-CoV-2 research and joined a group that's doing HIV clinical trials, which is kind of new for me and exciting. So I've just grabbed that opportunity with both hands, learning something new. I'm really excited with what I'm doing now. So really, I'm here, but I'm very grateful to have decided to join I think joining a different research group also helped a lot. Maybe I would have regretted it if I had stayed at Africa Head doing the same thing.
Ideas about marriage? Is there somebody in your life?
I have a 10-year-old son, which I love dearly. Yeah.
That's great. Super, super. Prof, on your side, tell us about those very personal, experiences. What have you said to your spouse? Your children? Tell us about that. And also, what have you not said to your spouse?
No, I do not have a spouse.
You don't have a spouse?
No, I don't.
Ladies?
Oh my God. So I set myself a goal. I said I wouldn't get married up until I got to associate professor.
Okay.
Because I knew the amount of work that I would need to do it to get there, and I would not. I knew in my heart of heart that I would never be able to balance that with a full family, like with a spouse, kids, and setup. So what that basically means is that everyone that you meet and you tell that 99% of the people are not of women are not going to be very receptive to that, because they might think that you're wasting their time. So it means that it's a lonely path to get to the top. And then when you get to the top, that's when you now start thinking, okay, now it's time for me to look for a wife. But when you start looking for a wife, all the people that you had your eyes on are probably gone at that time. So you have to start looking again. But like I said, it is a lonely journey. Luckily, I do have a daughter. She stays with me most of the time, and she's basically my best buddy now. And she's basically who I do most of my things for. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for that. Dr. Kibera, your experiences, tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm married. I got married in residency when I was, studying my pathology, and when I went into pathology, my dad had asked me, because in Kenya, I don't know about here, but in Kenya, everybody thinks a pathologist does autopsies, postmortems. They're very poor, and government employees. And so he asked me, have you ever seen a successful pathologist? And I told him no, because I didn't know any person who owned his own practice, but I did pathology anyway, and I just resigned myself to the fact that I'll just be a struggling doctor. And I married my wife, and she loved me the way I was, and I really tried hard not to make her believe that I had a lot of money, which I didn't anyway.
Sure.
So
some of the things you don't tell him.
Yeah, and then when ended up getting into entrepreneurship, it was, I think our marriage, our relationship was really tested for a couple of years because I resigned from employment. She had resigned from employment a year earlier. And when she resigned from employment, I had not told her I was going to resign from employment because I didn't know that I was going to, but the businesses needed me to resign. And so when I resigned from employment, both of us didn't have a job. And the first year was really, really difficult, and we didn't pay rent for 5 months. We had an amazing landlord who understood the situation, but it was very hard. My parents were extremely stressed. I'm the only person who's a master's degree in my family, and kind of like the hope. And then I've decided to essentially look like mess up my life, and they're all hoping that I would help them. So that did not look good for me. I was told I'm endangering the future of their grandchildren and myself, and it was very hard, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that with us. I think it's a common, I suppose, occurrence that men struggle with these things to say, what do I disclose, what do I not disclose? Is it my career or is it my spouse? I think these are things that we'd like the audience to hear about, especially the women in our lives, just in terms of what goes through our minds as men as well. Dr. Basing, in your case, please share your experiences with us. I mean, who is that lady or not? And tell us what you went through in terms of your career versus your personal circumstance. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I kept smiling as my other colleagues spoke about their experiences because I am beginning to see a similarity in all of these situations. Sometimes it can be easy for you to put the blame on yourself and think that maybe I'm not doing something right. But when you hear other people share experiences and it's similar to yours, you are inwardly happy because you know that it's not about me. I'm not the only person. But then I share with all that you've said, it's a very, very lonely journey. When I started my entrepreneurial journey, I had somebody I intended to get married to. The person felt I was giving more time to the business than to her. In fact, she used to joke that the business was my first girlfriend or my first wife, and she was just playing second fiddle. And initially started as a joke, but it became a very controversial part of the relationship because there were times you needed to do something for either her or you needed to do something for the business. And as a young entrepreneur, you're always thinking, well, I can always talk to her later, but let me do this for the business. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. And so I decided that, okay, let me then concentrate on the business until I am ready to get married or to have a relationship. One of the things that you would realize is that when you get to the top, finding somebody becomes extremely difficult. I don't know what women think, but most of the time, it's when you are starting out that you need a partner. But when you get to that top, there are so many people that come away, but it's extremely difficult to be able to make a choice. And that is the situation some of us are actually right now. And I only say that I wish I had married earlier, because right now I realize that I want to settle down. But it's quite difficult. So that is my circumstance. The business takes a lot of my time. And combining business with academia, with publishing, with a few other consultancies that I do and all of that, you realize that it takes a lot of your time, and you need somebody who understands. You never find somebody perfectly who understands your time. So it's that fine balance that as entrepreneurs or as young people we need to learn. I have not been able to learn that, so I'm ready to listen to the advice of those who do there and see how to find that. But that has been the best.
Super. So as we sort of draw to a close, regarding our discussion, Prof, if you were, let's say, 18, 19 when you finished school, would you have chosen a different path? And if so, what would that path be? And what would need to be in your environment? Maybe there were things that were missing in your environment. You said, no, this is the only thing I can do. What would need to be in your environment for you to, in essence, make a different decision regarding your career? Give advice to yourself as an 18-year-old. And the same question will apply to all our panelists.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I was quite privileged that I knew what I wanted to do when I was about 12. I was late primary school because I spent all my time in the library. I was just one of those kids. And then I just came across what I wanted to do, and then I just made a decision that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. There are a few things, though, like you said, but most of them are not professional. They are personal. I love my daughter with all my heart, but I sometimes wish I had her a bit later on in my life, you know, when things were a bit more settled, because then I would have had a family, and I would have, because there's, like how Dr. Cele was talking, there's opportunities that come your way, where jobs in different provinces, different countries, that you can't take because there's someone that you are now responsible for. So I think if I were to give advice to a budding scientist, is make up your mind early that you want to be a scientist. Absolutely. And then be that. But when it comes to your personal life, try and delay making certain big commitments, because there's a lot of opportunities that come as soon as you graduate, especially if you're really excited or committed to what you're doing. So I think that's the main thing. Just delay that particular process, because as a man, and I think I have to say this, as a man, there's certain expectations from you, not just from my daughter, but from my family as well. I also grew up in a township where my father was not working, my siblings are not working. So there's things that are responsibilities that fall on you directly. So while you can handle those, I think control what you can handle. So work hard, study hard, and if you can, delay having children as much as you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's my 2 cents worth.
Dr. Cele?
In terms of my career, I will still choose to be a scientist. I think I'm enjoying myself, having to learn new things
Super.
every time. I would give an advice to not an 18-year-old, maybe when did you finish your master's? A 22-year-old, because I kind of finished my master's and then I went to do an internship. Then I was like, PhD, I will see it another time. I kept on postponing. Hence, I did my PhD from 2010 to 2022. I would just do my PhD immediately after my master's. Because during my, when I was working as a lab technologist for Alex Segal, I was basically doing, performing assays for master's and PhD students, yet that could have been my work. I would have just finished my PhD sooner. Of course. Yeah. So I would definitely not take that gap, because you think it will be 1 year, before you know it, it's 5 years. So I would have just studied towards till I get my PhD.
Dr. Gibera, your advice and perhaps any regrets?
Yeah, I think a lot of my regrets are I should have done some things earlier. If I done some of those things earlier, sometimes, you know, procrastination on some decisions would have, you know, I look at the problem that we have now, that the problem that we're solving in terms of pathology services across the continent. It's a big problem. The earlier you start on it, the better. With family, we got married, and I'm glad that I made that decision. I think I feel in good time. And I married a very supportive wife. You know, despite all the challenges, she's just, you know, really stood with me despite all the pressures. What I would advise anybody who is thinking of going down this path, particularly if they're interested in doing entrepreneurship, is to enjoy every stage of their life and get as much as they can from that particular stage. So if they are in their undergraduate, learn as much as possible, enjoy it as much as possible. Because once it's gone, it's gone. You can't really go back to that stage. And a lot of the opportunities that you could have had for learning, if they pass, that's it. And I look back that I find that a lot of what I rely on now is stuff that I learned, years ago, and then believe that everything will be well, will be okay. Sometimes you really doubt yourself, but if you've taken the time, you're on the right path. It really helps, and that bit of faith is sometimes what you need to step out into the darkness and know that you've been prepared for that journey ahead by all those experiences.
Dr. Basing, advice you'd give to yourself if you were between 18 and 25, and perhaps highlight those things that you would do differently.
Okay, so for my professional life, I have absolutely, it's been a wonderful journey. I have learned to be resilient. I've gone through tough times, I've gone through wonderful times, but I wouldn't change anything because the journey has been, for me, the journey has been a destination. I've done a lot of wonderful things as a scientist and all of that, so it's been very, very wonderful. However, what I would advise my young self, for instance, is to make memories, just like the previous speaker said, to make memories for every single part of the journey, every single stage. Make memories, have fun, whatever you need to do. I think that enjoy every part of the journey. That is very important. Most of the time, as entrepreneurs, we tend to or even not only entrepreneurs, but as people who are building a life. So when you come from poverty and then you are trying to build something for yourself, we tend to delay gratification. We tell ourselves that, oh, when I get to this level, so personally, I would really advise that every single stage of the journey, have fun, enjoy yourself, learn something new, but then learn the lessons that you can, and then move on to the next stage. That would be the advice I would give myself. But professionally, I have no regrets.
Super. So thank you very much, colleagues and esteemed panelists. I think this session has been extremely enlightening, particularly for our young scientists in the audience who may face and who have faced the kinds of challenges that you yourselves have faced. I think what's important is particularly from the perspective of men, what men go through, the kinds of questions that they need to ask themselves and answer for themselves. I think it goes without saying that there's much in our own upbringing, our own personal experiences that in essence directs our career paths. I think it also goes without saying that a lot of us certainly have had to decide, to make difficult decisions regarding our careers. And so either one has regrets or one does not have regrets. But ultimately, it's about learning how to live with these particular choices, in essence, to move on from there. What we've certainly learned is that one should follow one's passion. It's really all about living life, as it were, enjoying every moment of it and making the best of it. There's nothing out there that says that life is easy, and equally there's nothing that says that life is easier for us as men as well. So thank you very much, colleagues, for all that you have shared with the audience today. We've certainly learned a lot, and certainly something that I think our youth out there can learn from, just in terms of what is out there, what is facing our youth. As we understand, the world has changed. So thank you very much for that, and I'd like to close the session. Thank you very much, colleagues, for your attention.
Thank you very much.